because Tor, who is running a multi-generational project in Norway, was engaged in our event last year, and it was fantastic to hear what he was doing. And he sent me a really moving note when he heard what we were doing, saying how important it was for him to feel like he was connected to something bigger. So I thought we'd start the tour in Norway. And so Tor, are you there, please? It's a bit like...
Yes, Ian, I'm here. I hope you can hear me.
Right, this is like the Eurovision Song Contest without steroids. Okay.
From north of Europe?
Yes, can we see you?
I hope you can you see me?
I can't, but hopefully everyone else can. And if they can't, I'm sure that we'll make that happen.
Okay, here is my slide coming up too. Thank you very much. My name is Tor Borten. First of all, I'd like to thank you very much, Ian, for inviting me to take part in this global collaborative effort to develop an ISO standard for multi-generational living. As we navigate this many COVID-19, what is forcing us to change in the future how we live, work, and interact with one another, I think this initiative can create a very essential standard for achieving communities that will make a very positive impact for many people's lives. So my company, Conduita, we are an investor and community developer building for a healthy and happy life. We believe very strongly in creating an impact to improve environmental, societal, economic, sustainability outcomes in the project we engage in. The Stockholm Resilience Center illustrated the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by stacking it into a pyramid, where number 17, participating partnership for the goals, is on top. I think more than a common goal, this heeds an urgent call for mankind to participate in a global partnership towards sustainability, the key that will unlock our future post-corona. In all our local community developments, we backed by a citizen-centered community development. We achieve this by engaging in what we call a pentahelix model, collaborating, bonding between business, academia, public sector, not-for-profit, and of course user involvement, working together for smarter living. I believe that if we now can develop an iOS standard, we will be tied into another dimension in a global network of best solutions. Currently, we are working on a new greenfield development in Halden. It's a small town in Norway with about 30,000 inhabitants. Here you see the sketch from our architect, how it looks like in a built structure. Our ambition for this project is to use our pentahelix approach to create a full-scale, real-life community living lab, where up to 500 people will have a smart and happy life. The concept is to invite participants to a co-creation process, integrating research and innovation to build, operate, and test smart and sustainable solutions over the next coming 10 years. I see the iOS Standard Forum today as a very strong initiative to connect partners who want to participate in such a project with us in Norway. We target 3 goals with our Fredrikshald Living Lab: healthy living, citizen engagement, and climate change. Why do we have 3 goals? Because for us, it goes hand in hand with our vision about bringing us back to a new normal, where we need to build more resilient, more sustainable, and more health-promoting communities. We want people to live a good life and in a more engaged village setting, sort of taking back the lifestyle of village life, the reinvented village, as we call it. People are social animals, and we don't like being isolated, as we have experienced during the COVID-19. We thrive on interaction, but also on activity. And for us, this is an integral part of the principle of healthy living in mind and body. The healthy living need to be created in a holistic approach, working together in co-creation and exploiting the fantastic opportunities that new digital technology is offering us. But there is a key obstacle in this. We cannot change the lifestyle of our inhabitants. We know that. But what we can do is make better choices easier, not just physical environment and nudging for exercise, but participating more in the community. I'm sure that when we make an iOS standard for multi-generational neighborhoods, it will help us improve a formula that describes the best way of building a sustainable living community for all ages in Norway, and I hope also this can be part of a global movement. So by illustrating from the audience, I tried to flip the slide, sorry. I'd like to thank you very much for this short speak from Norway. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Tor. That was a whistle-stop tour of Norway. And as you can see, they're doing some really interesting, innovative work. And I like you don't call it a triple helix approach. What do you call it? Helix?
We call it pentahelix. It's 5 components.
Yeah, I know. 5 that's a good one. I haven't heard of that pentahelix. You'll have to send me more information about that one. We have to expand on it. It's very, very interesting. And we are now going to take a really long trip to Australia to meet with David Stevens, who's the Managing Director of Standards International. And David, are you there?
Yes, and hello from Australia.
All right.
Really pleased to be invited to this webinar, and to thank Ian and ISO and NatWest for the opportunity, but more the opportunity to share with everyone today. I've got a background in psychology and anthropology, and I suppose, been involved in ageing since I was a young university student, and coming out, I've always tried to think about inclusion, not exclusion, and trying to encourage that across. Particularly now, my organisation, we work with organisations on what's exemplar, going from good to exemplar, and transporting that across the world. What I would like to do is to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I speak on, the Aboriginal elders, and their contribution as first Australians, and the honour which we hold them in Australia. In particular, I suppose it's quite sad still, some many years on, that we still have a society that is still subtly segregating older people. And we do this sometimes by building retirement villages on the edge of our communities, on cheaper land. We build vertical fortresses for people that become isolating, and people move in and then gradually become more and more isolated. We have signage that says how frail older people are. We've got deficit funding models which teach the community what people don't have, teach what older people can't do rather than what they can do. There's a lot of still ageist language. We continue to use the word older person, care recipient, frail elderly dementias. People over 70 now is something that's come with COVID. And there's a continual promotion of retirement, and getting ready for that. What we're finding is that in Australia, that older people are still becoming more marginalised and victimised, and it's all too apparent in housing for older people. There's a lot of anxiousness and feeling insecure about the future, about what's going to be affordable. And the point made before, it's not just affordable for this current generation, but the older generation, but the new generations that are coming up, Generation X and Y, about what will their later life be like. We now have an opportunity to make a difference and to seize the moment. And I want us to challenge everyone to rethink everything. Everything should be on the agenda to think of something different. The current model isn't working, and that's been said earlier, but it's been redundant for some time. We do need to make housing affordable, communities affordable, neighbourhoods affordable, not see older people as victims, a burden, but as community members, partners and champions of later life. And if we're going to a super age society, we need to see how we can promote them as being leaders and champions. Build resilient communities, not based on facilities, aged care homes, social services and government, but more on each other. And surely we have learned this from COVID-19, how communities have come together and we have a collective spirit. We need to use technology as an enabler to connect people, re-engineer our cities, towns and hubs to not just reclaim the high street or the town and just build another enclave of older people there, but think about how that can be an interactive, intergenerational neighbourhood. We need to build the capacity of the community for assimilation. We need to learn how to be with each other of all ages. Earlier on, when some 20 years ago, I took my children to be in a creche, set up a creche in a nursing home, and we were doing, older person's home for 4-year-olds 20 years ago to see how that worked, and we had the same results. It was fantastic opportunity to get people together. But we also need to build and establish our community so that no one is left behind, and to think about that. What we have, so go back one. So I can go back one.
While you're doing that, Natasha, can I just point out that I think that David's video is not showing, just the slides on the other platform. Thank you. Carry on.
Just go back one if we can, Natasha. And why multi-generational community standards matter is it provides an opportunity for us, I think, to define the key elements of what we mean by this, to have some collective understanding across borders. And what's expected to be in place is a minimum, but we shouldn't focus on the minimum. We should focus on what we can aspire to exceed those standards and inform them over time. They're going to be lives. They're going to be things that we can interact with. I think the opportunity we have today is to form that community of practice, community of understanding. They will provide an international benchmark. I think it's quite possible for that to be achieved. If people don't want to be assessed or use them, they can still self-assess against them. But they will lead to a great sharing, I believe, across borders and regions, new ideas for what community generational living could be. And they act as a safeguard to falling short of the minimum and failing to integrate and falling back into ageism. I think what I have the vision for Standards Wise is to be a willing partner in this process, in this journey, and to contribute internationally to discussions and stimulate the conversation. In some ways that can be a disruptor, but importantly to be constructive. So I'd like to thank you very much for today, and I really look forward to the rest of the webinar to listen to other people and hear your thoughts on this important topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Really interesting. I particularly like the idea of a community of practice. We're now going to move to China, to Beijing. Professor Liu, who is the Director of Service Engineering and Smart Health for Senior Labs in the Beijing Academy for Science and Technology. I met the team in Beijing last November. I was invited there for the first time, and it was a really fascinating experience. And I will let Jianbing explain what he does, but from a personal perspective, to see what they call stations in the streets of Beijing, where they have created environments for older adults, kind of clubs, I suppose, to spend time to actually exercise, to engage with technology. Really very, very interesting. I'll touch on that further in a moment. But if I can introduce you to Professor Liu, and he will take you on a tour.
Hey, hello. Thank you for the introduction. Can you hear me?
Not very well.
Not very well.
You can get a bit closer to the microphone.
Yeah, it's better?
No.
How about this one?
No. Could somebody tell me, Natasha, can you tell me if it's any louder for anyone else, but it's not loud enough for me?
Is it better? Okay.
No. Could one of the production team just comment, please?
It's not on our side.
Okay.
I think
You can't hear it either, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can hear you. Right?
Okay, you'll
it
have,
needs to be turned up from their side.
yeah, you'll have to turn up your volume.
Okay. How about this one?
No.
Maybe okay, maybe I have to change the devices. Then you can ask some questions. I come back later. Okay.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll switch to Switzerland while you're doing that.
Maybe I'll do it. Maybe I can use this way. Oh, sorry, because it's very clear. I can hear you.
That's better when you were closer to the microphone.
This is better? Is this better?
I can hear, but production.
Yeah, we can hear
tell
you
me-
fine now.
Great. Okay.
Okay.
And can we and can the people on the live platform see him, please? Because
Okay, let's okay.
production, can you confirm?
Okay. So I'm sorry for
That's perfect.
right. Okay. I'm so hello. I'm speaking in Beijing. Yeah. Okay. Can I control the slides? Okay. Next slide. I'm working for the Beijing Academy for Science and Technology. Okay. Because Ian tell me I have 10 minutes for talk, and but I'm sorry, slides is some like longer, so I will skip most of it. So please help me just skip it, okay? Okay, and I'm the biggest is the largest local organization, ID organization in Beijing and in China. It's have more than 5,000 employees. Is the biggest advance. I'm a director of a lab for the smart, healthy, and active aging innovation here, known as the biggest AAS. Can you hear me? It's better. Oh.
Yes, we can hear you.
You can. Okay.
Very well.
Very well. Okay, great. And so the key feature of Digest it's a application research and the linkage with the other with the R&D resources and industry. It's act as a hub in the innovation. Is This is the feature of the business. And now it's thank you. So thanks the Spirit that invite me to join this workshop. Thank you very much. And so it's not easy to have this online meeting. It's not easy to organize it. And now it's COVID-19 now in Beijing is now controlled. So it's some date here. So it's existing effect here. And now we are back to normal life. And so it's the school, it's the tour, it's the market, and also our national community sessions here today is here. So now it's back to normal lives. Regarding to our topic for today's for the multi-generational neighborhoods and standards, it's a framework for that. So environment and facilities and service systems, community and governance is the three factors for that. And the ICT revolutionary and the demographic change is the other main factor for that. Or background. Maybe this COVID-19 maybe as a background for that. so is it. And I'm leading a program for 10 years. Yeah, because the business get the funding directly from Beijing government, so it's our work to do that. Also, we get funding from the Minister of Science and Technology in China, so it's my first big project from most about for the Living Lab and the senior care. Yes, yeah, and then it became the big program. It is in okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. So it's a framework for our you see, it's a service development, it's a service platforms, also our lab buildings, and also the network buildings, and also this is the demonstrations, also policy research. So in the last 10 years, I'm working on this framework with more than 50 staffs or colleagues. And now it's not just but it's now become a reality. Realities here is it's adopted by one of the districts in Beijing. It's we have a big population. One district is very big. This is a date here. We call it the services in China. We call it is our care home in China. It delivers services similar to or better than those in nursing homes to elderly and home-based care management and industrial. So the key point is care management to home care, and second is ICT technology used in these services. So this is the key points, and how it all the services is based on the community. In Beijing, we have a community service center in Beijing, and the plan is to have 1,000 community service center in Beijing to provide the home care services, other things. So it's our home care, home community service center here, and this is a the services portfolios. In between care management as an integrator, and the other we have the other 6 services, 6 kinds of services. It's more than 100 service item, real services to provide for thousands of elderly people in Beijing now. It's a reality, not just the R&D project or pilots. And besides the services. We are also doing some, we call it retrofitting, and also a digital instruction for elderly people. So it's limited to our, facility buildings or the assistive tools for elderly people. So it's our work in Beijing. So it's a sample of the, the electronic devices for elderly people. Behind them, it's services for that. And this is a platform for the ICT services integrated to local personal services. Here platform, here we have, senior people local service systems to provide service to elderly people with the support of the ICT platform. And part of that is ICT-based services supply. We have the integrated integration platform for that. And this is also be divided in China as a community. The community is more than include several neighborhoods in China, and also each community have more than 2,000 to 5,000 population here. So yeah, it's a bigger one here, and so it's the ICT the platforms structure for that. It's the community, it's the services, it's the platform, it's also services integrated, and also here so it's the last topics. Possible contribution to the developer and the promotion of this ISO standard. I think there are 3 points. First one is we are first one we are already do some work about the standard development, and some of the already used in the systems. It includes service quality standard for service quality and technology quality. It's in our in Beijing. So and the second one is how the care homes will be application scenarios for trials of the ISO standard. Scenario application scenario is a Chinese word in Beijing, in China. It means a very large application field for innovation, in which many of the new services and technology can be integrated and tried for innovation here. So, and also supported by the government for innovation here. Yeah. And the last one is we have a very close relationship with some standard making minister, like a Chinese Ministry of Standard. Okay, that's the one slide. Minister of Civil Affairs and other levels institutes. Yeah. It's the standard for quality, and second is we have the last one. We already doing the project, ongoing project. We have already developed a checklist for evaluation for senior friendly communities. Senior friendly community in China means not only for adults but for all the generation, but friendly for elderly people. So it's the same concept with multi-generation neighborhoods. So it's an ongoing project we are doing here. So, yeah. So I think I have to stop here. So, and the slides is left in the platform. If you like, you can we can share to see more information about that. And maybe last one is we already have some international cooperation with about more than 10 countries here. So, yeah. In slides, we have some here, and we also have a conference. International Forum of Senior Care Science and Innovation years. So this year will also be an online conference. I have to stop here. Thank you very much. Okay, bye bye.
Thank you very much, Jianbing. It's fantastic to be able to have an insight from China. We will have questions afterwards, but I would like to ask you just one question. Do you feel that your government would actively encourage the collaboration necessary to work with other countries towards a common standard? How supportive would your government be of such collaboration?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I several years ago, I on behalf of the China to attend the APEC standard workshop for the standard for senior care. Yes. Also last year, I attended a conference in South Korea, in Republic of Korea, Asia European meeting also for that. Yeah. And I know, because I working very close with the minister for standard and civil affairs, and also for technology. So I know we are supported. Yeah. Support this kind of collaboration. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll hold you to that, and we'll work out how you can actively get more involved. But I understand that you're going to stay with us through your night, so you'll be around during the course of the day. Is that correct?
Sorry, just the last. Pardon. Last word.
You're gonna be staying with us today, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yes, you are. You already told me. And even though it's night time, which we very much welcome. So we're going to switch to Switzerland, back to Europe. Alexander Groupman, who is the co-founder and CEO of InnoFuel. And again, Alexander has attended our events in the past. Very interesting approach to finance and construction. And I will turn over to him now if he says hello. Where are you, Alexander?
Hello, Ian. I'm in Switzerland, indeed, in Nyon, just between Geneva and Lausanne. Thank you so much, Ian, for inviting me again for the third year, consecutive year. Very thrilled to be able to share my views from a more entrepreneurial side to the international community and see how ideas that we're working on can create value for the rest of the community, but also in the opposite around. I've always admired from the beginning the way that entrepreneurs have been welcomed into the association, and we're able to be part of the entire journey. So really, thank you so much for making that happen, Ian. Perhaps before going quickly into the subject, COVID-19, obviously we're all confronted with it. We're all from home, but what basically did it do for our industry is that it basically made clear that isolation, as already mentioned, and quality of life, basically towards our elderly is a very, very, very hot topic, and that we really need to address more concrete solutions for our elderly. Now, from a private sector perspective, I have to admit there is one downside that COVID has brought us, is that as we do not know today whether there's going to be a second wave, third wave, and we have very much difficulties in calculating what the impact will be for our governments, for the private sector, for the service provider. As we are touching many different industries, like even construction industry and so forth, it is very tough at this moment to really give a very clear status where we are, or at least where we will be in the 6 to 12 months. But perhaps there's something much more important that comes out of this, is that the indebtedness of our societies, as well as the deficits that most of our European countries across the globe, or even outside, are running, is that while we are thinking about solutions, we need to at the same time, and that's why I like the multi-generational aspect very strongly that has been mentioned here, is also to make sure when we design solutions for the future, we have to at the same time think about the next generation. And not to quote our Minister of Finance of Switzerland this week, is that our debt is like still unpaid taxes for the future. And when we think about our kids, We should really clearly remember that. So the pressure, not only on doing the right things, is there today, but even more in doing them right. And that pressure has become, for all of us, much more important. Just as a little side comment to that. And I think, again, this is something that puts our business, but also the way that we present solutions and also the sustainability of it all for the long run, even much to a greater extent. Just a note on myself. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Innofuel. Innofuel has been sourcing technologies around e-health and fintech, mainly for the healthcare industry. Since 2-3 years ago, I've joined the family business, who was active for more than 15 years already in conceptualizing, building, and operating assisted living. We believe it was time to also start just doing that on our own after 15 years building it for others. So that's why we started our first operations in Belgium, Croatia, and Switzerland. And currently we are establishing partnerships to further develop it in Norway, Spain, and the Netherlands. What are the big challenges that we actually see even more? And you asked me the question, Ian, is that how can ISO or certification help in the design of new solutions? And I think more than ever, on the last point that I mentioned earlier, doing it right is more present than ever. What do we see in most countries is that most countries use different standards, if they have standards. And I will dive into a few in a few seconds. But basically, it's about trust. And trust from a multi-stakeholder point of view. Obviously, first, for the habitants, the elderly, and his directly entourage. If today we have solutions out there, to which extent today do they provide value for our elderly and our society? Second, for our governments. Third, for as well as investors, because I mentioned sustainability, that's a very important aspect. So this multi-stakeholder point of view in providing solutions and doing it right is very important. There are basically two different blocks that we see standards still lacking being developed. One is the building aspect. What services, square meters, room. I think Leon also mentioned it earlier. It's all about geographic and location as a second aspect of the building aspect, and also all the technical elements that are related to that. We see today much about energy consumption, the whole HVAC ecosystem, building and home automation being more and more explicitly used as creating value, connectivity, communication, entertainment, and as already mentioned in previous slides, the interoperability. Then besides that, obviously, is the operational aspect. To be very clear is that we are not in a medicalized environment, and we have really freedom and the liberty of choice at the core center of the value proposition and operations, and being the central point of contact and the interconnector of it all. Again, most of the countries today do not have really qualified standards, and for the ones that have, don't have it in a uniform way. So that's where we see the opportunity for an ISO certificate.
Thank you, Alexander. That was rich as ever and as anticipated. Fantastic. We will be having Q&A at the end of the session, but I have been advised that there are a number of people suggesting that it would be really important to engage stakeholders in the conversation, NGOs, agencies, and of course, older adults and people living with dementia and other conditions. Be assured that is a critical part of the agenda. We will be talking about it along the way, but to be holistic, you have to involve everybody in the process. And I just wanted to make that clear as we move forward. So we are now going to switch to Italy, to Milan in Italy. We don't have to wear a face mask to get there, and we will be meeting with Alberto Sanna, who's the director of Life and Health of the Scientific Institute of San Raphael. I've been there. It's a fantastic environment that Alberto has created. And in terms of the whole idea of a neighborhood of the future, this man really gets it. Alberto, over to you.
Thank you so much for the words and for the invitation. And I'm really happy to join this community, which is growing every year. And I think that this challenge that you gave us to merge with standard is a very critical one, because if we want to scale up, we need to have impact, and we can have impact only if we have standards. So I have my keywords come from this slide that you see here. As just to say, I work with this big hospital, which is San Raffaele Hospital, with a big research center, and my background is engineering. So I will share with you my pick, if I can, because I'm okay. So this is our core business, is the health in the holistic sense. So we are focusing on generating environments, services, processes, and interaction that create physical, mental, which is emotional, and social well-being. And we understand today how important is social well-being, when basically the keywords of today is social distancing. So it's very important to focus on the holistic aspects of healthcare, and how we do this is through our Living Lab, and I hope that, okay, there is some delay in the switch of the slide, but this is the Living Lab of the San Raffaele Hospital and Research Center. It's a complete downscale city. It's a compact district where everything you have in the city, we have it in this area, from hotels, private metro, big parking, school, university, sports facilities, 4,000 square meters of shops, supermarkets, you name it, we have it. And we use it at the Living Lab to test with a scientific and medical approach. So with protocol that we are using in medicine, we are using this protocol to make experiments as a Living Lab on all possible aspects of transformation of products, businesses, and services in terms of health, and of Hospital of the Future, Life of the Future, and City of the Future. This is an example of what we do with a European project, or in this case with private companies. In this case, we have this collaboration with a real estate company that is creating a whole environment, and we are designing together with them a new smart city, where our focus is to stimulate services and infrastructure to promote social health and well-being. And in the next slide, we will see also the need of redesigning urban parks. We are very focused on redesigning the urban park. We call it the urban park of the future, because in whatever urban area, a urban park are the most precious assets, and it's very important to activate them for the society, because unless we have a different understanding, they are very poorly used by the community. So we generated a new concept where the social and digital aspect bring people together in the outdoor and in the park, with new concepts which are based on leisure and social well-being. In the next slide, we also see the same concept applied to another key aspect of or another key aspect of social well-being, as we intend it, is autonomy. Autonomy comes from the chance that you can get out from your neighborhood. So we designed a European project that we see here. On one side, we designed a shared car for the elderly, which is for everybody. But what you can see there is that the seat is getting out. It's a robotic seat that's getting out and brings you in, because one of the most difficult things for elderly people is to get in and out of the car. And just to give some other example, in the trunk we put a robot that takes the luggage in. We made so many others arrangement in the interface to make easier for the elderly to interact with all the system of the car by gestures and voice. All of this is very critical, because we cannot have without autonomy, we cannot have social well-being. As well, we are working on another European project to enhance co-modality in routing, to enable people to get out in multiple ways from the place that they are to the place that they want to be. In the next slide, I want to quote this information from an American retirement study center, where they have been asking what is essential for you when you project yourself in your retirement age. You see that all of the people, all ages, speak about travel. So it's extremely important that we do not focus only on the neighborhood where we live, but we think also on the neighborhood of other people where we would like to share some cultural and social experience, because travel and tourism is an essential part of our businesses and our socialization scheme, and our also self-confidence. So getting to the and we have addressed this concept of well-being tourism. So if you put all these 4 key messages together, here is my final remark, that it's very important to work on redesigning residential areas, because we need to design and make them resilient for the innovation of the future. We cannot build things today that in 5 years or 3 years' time will be, let's say, become old, because we didn't project what technology and what people would do in the next 5, 10, 15 years. We need to have a broader access, a broader concept dealing with common spaces like outdoor urban parks. We need to stress the importance of standardization of services and products and tools for granting personal mobility to individuals. And one element, just to finish, is travel tourism, well-being tourism, and redesigning the services where we will relocate for having fun in the future. It's very important to focus on it, because this is others' neighborhood we would like to stay in sometimes. And this will be also a revenue model for your own neighborhood, because if you have good attraction, you will make money out of your real estate. Thank you so much for the time, and very happy to follow all the day discussion with all this community.
Thank you, Alberto. I really like the idea of making money out of getting old. I think there's a surefire opportunity for everyone in that one. But also specifically, we talked about autonomy. I think that's really important. I agree, and we'll cover that further. But also resilience. You made a very important point there. And Paul Quinn, who is the director of regeneration for Clarion Housing, he's not looking at 25 years' time or 50 years' time. He's actually now thinking about 100 years' time to develop new neighborhoods, and that is a hell of a challenge. Paul will be joining us later on today, and we'll be talking about that. So it's part of the broader context. So thank you, Milan. We are now looking at the Commonwealth. The only concern that we potentially have is, I understand there might be some broadband issues I saw with Andrew, but Andrew, can you hear me?
And indeed, thanks very much, Ian.
Brilliant. If you'd like to introduce yourself, he is the chairman of the Commonwealth Association for the Aging.
Okay, thank you, Ian, very much indeed. I hope, here comes some slides, and I hope I have control of them. Greetings, everybody, from the UK, where we continue to be locked down, gradually easing ourselves out of the dreadful experience that this nation has been through, along with many others. I'd just like firstly to acknowledge and thank the Agile Aging Alliance, ISO and NatWest, for organising and arranging this, and for the Microsoft team who've done wonders with the technology.
Andrew, thank you for that, but I need to just have a quick word, because we've got sound issues. If the tech team is aware of that, I think it might be at your end. Can somebody help here, because we're getting feedback on Andrew's mic? Andrew, can you get on speaking? Can't hear him. Andrew, can you speak? Can't hear you. Have you muted yourself?
No, I'm not muted, but I've turned my speaker right down. Is that better?
That's much better, thank you.
Okay. Right. I'll make a start. So I just wanted to thank the Agile Aging Alliance, ISO, and NatWest for organising this, and the Microsoft team for bringing it all about technically. I'd also like to acknowledge my colleague David from Standards Wise International in Australia. I was privileged to work with him in Australia, where I was the CEO of a large organisation, a care providing organisation, for a number of years before so-called retirement. I'd also like to acknowledge the presenters so far. They've been fantastic and really, really interesting. So all I can do in these short minutes is to introduce who we are and explain why I think it's important that we engage, and we're very keen to do so, with this very important initiative. For those who are not familiar with the Commonwealth, and not everybody by any means is, it emerged from the post-colonial era in the United Kingdom, and is now a collection, an eclectic collection, I have to say, of some 54 countries from across the world, with about 4 or 5 so-called developed countries: UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Malta, Singapore, maybe those. But the majority of the countries in the Commonwealth are developing and lower and middle income countries, for which this journey of aging is a relatively new one in the terms of the provision of services in varying levels of development across those countries. We are a network organisation trying to shine a light on the great work that is being done in some of those small countries. So, for example, if it ranges from small island states like Trinidad and Tobago across through to the Mediterranean and Malta. In Africa, we have countries such as Rwanda, Cameroon, Tanzania. India is a member of the Commonwealth with a massive population of 110 million older people, set to double in the next 20 years. Australia, New Zealand, and then a lot of small island states in the Pacific who are active and enthusiastic members of the Commonwealth. We try to reach out to them all. Our purpose is to promote the interests of older people in Commonwealth countries, to improve their quality of their lives through shared learning, experience, and best practice in service design, development, and provision. And to do so, we adopt a twin track approach. One is that we campaign, and we are at the moment in the heart of advocating for a better deal for older people in the ageism that has become apparent through the pandemic. But we're also very much rooted in service delivery and service design, and many of our stakeholders are the providers of care services in communities across the Commonwealth. We are, as I said, we're really concerned about ageism. A light has been shone on it, and some very unattractive aspects have come to light during the coronavirus pandemic, and it has highlighted even more the importance of those of us that advocate for the rights and obligation and needs of older people, that we should be doing that. But Common Age is not only about older people. We're working very much for a Commonwealth which is all age friendly, that recognises the interdependence of generations. And so this agenda that we're talking to today is really important. We've already heard about the Sustainable Development Goals, and of course SDG 11, which we're talking about today, sustainable cities and communities, but virtually all of the Sustainable Development Goals impact on older people, and older people are also willing and able to contribute to the achievement of those goals, and we neglect them often in the way that we approach civil society development. One of the things that we're trying to support is the work for a UN Convention on the Rights of Older People. We're also
very keen to promote the World Health Organization and their Decade of Healthy Aging, 2020 to 2030, being launched this year. And we want to challenge isolation and loneliness. It still is far too prevalent in too many societies. And so one of the things we're keen to promote is that a new and innovative, well, not necessarily new, but an innovative approach for many is the promotion of the replacement of traditional care models of looking after and housing older people with a much more of an integrated approach, much more of a household approach, and we're very taken and supportive of what I call the Abbeyfield model. And for those that are not familiar with that, the link is in the slide. We have an approach to multi-generational communities that we're trying to pursue. One is that of the integration of services from public and private sectors so that health systems, care systems, housing systems are thoroughly and properly and formally integrated. And we have seen the vivid, stark realities in some countries, not least of which the United Kingdom, where for decades we have worked with silos, where the health system is not interactive with the social care system and the housing system, and it means that older people inevitably fall between the cracks of that lack of integration that we see. We talk intergenerationally, and of course that's the theme of this, and so we believe very much in the interaction between generations and the mutual support that is needed between older generations, where older people can support younger generations and vice versa. We see some amazing examples of innovation across the Commonwealth on a daily basis, often by young people who are working on initiatives to support elders in their communities. And we want light to shine on those. We want it to be inclusive, and of course we want it to be international. We are wanting to challenge some of the norms that we think we should not, in the future post-pandemic, just simply revert to the status quo ante. We must move on and try to define what a new normal way of civil society development should look like. And we feel in that the idea of institutional living should be challenged in every way. We have seen recently in many countries that care homes are not attractive places to be, and the massive death toll that we've seen in our own country and in others is making it even less likely, if it ever was likely, that older people will choose to spend the latter part of their lives in care homes. We also think that the days of the out-of-town continuous care retirement community, which was very much a fashion in the 80s and 90s in many parts of the world, we see that the days of that are numbered, and we want to see older people at the heart of their communities in high street locations, but very much at the centre of things. We note that retirement villages are very popular in many developed countries, but of course traditional multi-generational villages formed organically are the norm in most countries and in most developing countries, and retirement communities are very much a minority activity. And we want to really suggest that in this work it's really important that developing countries are recognized for the quality of many of their communities where older people still are kept at the heart of social and community life. And we note that older people really live best when they are included at the heart of their communities and where they are able to continue to contribute. So some of the programs that we're involved in, the World Health Organization, we want to promote.
I'm going to have to ask you to summarize now.
Okay,
Andrew.
just coming to the end, thank you. The WHO Age-Friendly Cities Programme, Dementia-Friendly Communities. We work with a number of Commonwealth organisations, particularly in what is called the urbanisation cluster with Commonwealth organisations. And we note very much that the United Nations is trying hard in this respect, and we need to link with their work through the UN Habitat Organisation. So, Ian, you've asked us some exam questions. I've answered them in this slide. I won't dwell on it, other than to say that we want to work with you. We're very delighted to be part of this. We want to promote and work with our partner organisations, some of which are shown on this final slide, which has gone. You cut me off. Oh, there we are. So Help Age International, the Global Aging Network, Alzheimer's Disease International, the Global Alliance for the Rights of Older People and Age International are just some of the organisations with which we are connected. Ian, thanks for letting me be part of this. I look forward to hearing from others, and we'll stop there.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Andrew. Tell me, do you have any kind of indicative idea of how many people you're actually covering with this alliance that you've created, this network?
Well, we have a growing network of stakeholders in those Commonwealth countries. We've been going for about 6 years, and we are gradually building our access. We work with a lot of other Commonwealth organisations which have representation in all Commonwealth countries, and we're building our network.
The size of the populations collectively that you're targeting?
Billions.
Yes.
If you aggregate the countries of the Commonwealth, they form the majority of the population of the globe.
That's quite an ambitious undertaking, I must say. Fantastic. Thank you very much for participating. It was really interesting. I liked all your ins, in particular the integrated approach, everything connected, which I think is really important, and we'll touch on that further in the Q&A. But now we're going to turn to Jeremy Porteous, who is the founder and managing director of Housing Lin UK. When I originally joined Innovate UK and was introduced to this world, it's about 2013, I guess, I was introduced to Jeremy as, if you like, the godfather in this space, because he's been actively looking at housing in particular for the longest time. And if there is a gold standard in the UK, I would say that what Jeremy does with Housing Lin is that as it currently stands. Of course, the idea is to take it to the next level. I'm going to introduce Jeremy with a question, because when I asked if he would be available, he actually said that he was supposed to be participating in the Olympics the World Cup, Football World Cup for over 50s. Is that right, Jeremy?
Ian, you're right. I was due to fly out tonight to Turkey to play in the weekend tournament for the over 50s age-friendly soccer tournament. So that has understandably has been cancelled, but we look forward to playing with our friends and fellow teams next year.
And have you kept fit by running around the living room? And what position do you play?
Well, I'm a goalkeeper, and I realised in my presentation I've called it raising the roof, but I should have called it raising the bar. I'm known for my shot stopping.
Excellent. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just waiting to get control of the screen. Here we are. Yeah, so thanks, I'll kick off now. And I've heard that there's been a lot of conversations about how can we improve the way we engage with stakeholders, both professional and the population at large. The role of the Housing Learning Improvement Network, or Housing Lin for short, is to bring together a collection of both professional and practitioners and users of services to take greater control around the types of housing that they want to live in later life. And age is not one of chronology. We're not defined by our age. It's around aging generally, and looking at all ages in terms of the way we approach our domesticity, the types of urban environments, and our relationships with other sort of people in those communities. And in terms of thinking about today, I was very much struck about the type of relationship capital we need to grow, both in the UK but also globally, both in terms of the financial capital, but also around the social and personal relationships that really bind us together to create the sort of friendship groups, the neighbourhoods, and the multi-generational neighbourhoods that we need to sustain the type of lifestyle and ways of operating, whether it's for work or for living or for leisure, in taking that forward. So in recent months, especially under the pandemic globally, it's not just the social architecture that we need to think about, it's also about the physical architecture and how we blend that together. And I was struck by what Andrew was just saying about those 5 ins. I would add that we also need to look at the way we inform people about what those choices are, as well as what the inspiration is to enable people to make decisions, to look at the types of multi-generational housing that they occupy or the communities that they want to live in. In England, there was a very influential all-party parliamentary group report that looked at some of this a year or so back, and it noted that, contrary to a lot of thinking, that there was a substantial decline in the sort of shared spaces and the types of communities that we have. We're becoming much more individualistic, and we needed to create better community spaces, such as libraries, or where we have day opportunities, the way we use our urban centres to create better connectivity with our friends, with our neighbours and our communities. And a piece of work we've undertaken for the Scottish Architectural Design Society looks at different types of integrations and where that leads to different typologies. And I was struck by Tor and others in their presentations around the concept of living labs and how we co-produce a range of multi-generational options in a much better and much more synchronized way. And I think that's where the standards will enable us to create that framework for those sort of participatory methods. There's a new book just come out by RIBA on radical housing, designing for multi-generational and co-living housing for all. It's a real inspiring read. I recommend it to everybody. It sort of builds on a series of different reports and guidance that have come out over the years. Indeed, Lord Best, who's speaking, I think, later on this morning, who championed and pioneered lifetime homes in the UK over 15 years ago. And it's been a decades of discussion, debate, and informing and influencing that has led to reports like the Happy Report, Age-Friendly Housing reports by RIBA, but also about looking at how we create our healthy neighbourhoods, some of the things that Sandra was talking about in Italy. And we have similar types of models being developed in the UK, in England in particular, for example, in Ebbsfleet, in Kent, or Northstowe in Cambridge. I wanted to focus on this sort of engagement aspect. It's something I've coined collaborate, and we heard from Nick and Nellie earlier and others talk about collaborative approaches, whether it's the Helix model. I think it's about collaborative forms, and I've identified 4 or 5 key sort of components. One of these is around co-production, thinking about that living lab approach, polling residents' experiencing, not just once a year, but actually continually engaging with residents to better understand their place, their longing, and their belonging in their communities. We need to think about the different forms of collaborative communities. Andrew talked about abbey fields. There's also extra care or different forms of specialist accommodation. But we must also remember that many older people live in existing housing and our mainstream housing. So we also need to think about the wraparound services that are available for them to build that resiliency that you referred to. And some of this is about creating those appropriate caring communities where we can address the loneliness and isolation and deliver those well-being outcomes that we've heard others talk about. And some could also be around greater use of community hubs, so we have a much more integrated approach both to our indoor space but also our outdoor space, something that's become really exposed with coronavirus about our access to green space and how that impacts our health and well-being, and particularly our mental health. And again, going further down the line, how do we think about the future in terms of how we think about the mixed development and mixed use of our cities, our towns, our villages, so where we combine residential and wider use, from schools and cafes to retail, offices and leisure. Some of the challenges I think we have is that at a micro level, we do some fantastic work, and we've got lots of examples, and some of these have already been referred to this morning. The Channel 4 programme, An Older People's Home with St Monica Trust, or Extra Care Villages. The programme in Cambridge with Link Age, a voluntary organisation that enabling students to live in a variety of sheltered housing places. the role of home sharing internationally, thinking about how to offer accommodation in return for low-level support and befriending services. And an innovative little organisation working closely with Clarion that you mentioned here and the Mercer's Charitable Trust in common living, offering opportunities for older people to visit schools and talk about their shared experiences and their livelihoods. And I think those are sort of little micro models that are really important to think about that social architecture. And on the physical architecture in the UK, we've got some exemplary design being developed. Many of these happy design standards that I referred to earlier. They include Parkside in Derbyshire, an age-friendly block of flats right in the heart of Matlock, a scheme developed specifically for multi-generational living on the Olympic Park in Cobham Manor, a really inspiring co-housing scheme in Cambridge on the other Sterling Prize called Marmalade Lane, and linking in with sustainability and climate change, some of the work that the Joseph Rowntree Foundation have undertaken in Derwentthorpe, just outside York. So again, all really good aspects. So taking these forward, I really think that if we're going to sort of build on what Alexandra was talking about, the impact, we need to think how we can use these as a way of influencing. How can we develop the ISO standards with you to influence the national government, local practice, design, tools, as well as to share that practice through better and informed knowledge exchange, better thought leadership, so we can inspire future generations, and how can we network together? And we've already got in the UK a really interesting little group chaired by the United for All Ages with Stephen Thorpe called the Intergenerational Housing Network. So that gives you a flavour of some of the aspects. Thank you.
Fantastic. That was really, as expected, insightful. I think what you're seeing as a collective, and you'll see a lot of more of that during the course of the day, is there is so much going on. There is so much going on across the world. There is a huge amount going on in the UK, and this is one of the, I guess, sense of frustrations that I have in terms of missed opportunity, because what we're actually thinking about here is the creation of a market. And in order to create a market, you need people singing from the same hymn sheets, and you need to ensure that there is more continuity of people's actions. And I think that's one of the important aspirations of what we're trying to do here today. Could I ask that the slide that was there for a moment is put back up, which has got the social media information on it, because we are looking for you guys to be our echo chamber, if you like, today. Well, actually, you're part of the forum. But what we want is an echo chamber that reaches further, that actually engages members of your respective organisations in your respective countries, so that we can actually consolidate this interest. So on that screen, you will see some Twitter handles. We are tweeting from @Agile Aging, and then there's @ISO Standards. We've got an Agile Aging hashtag. We've also got a Better Together as a hashtag. So help to spread the word. We want to be heard. Now, the thing is, we are running a little bit behind, and therefore, for the first session, we're going to keep the Q&A relatively short. The good news is the majority of the people who are participating will be involved as we move forward, so they can get involved with other Q&As. But I'd like to turn to, is it Nell or Nick, who have selected a couple of questions to get the ball rolling?
Yeah, I can take this question. I think I found a really interesting one, and thank you for the person who submitted it. I think it was 2 individuals, actually. So the question is, do the speakers have any suggestions on how we could actually ensure that minority groups are considered in these multi-generational neighborhoods? And secondly, are there also suggestions to consider urban or rural inequalities?
So, who would like to address that question, one or t'other, or both, in fact? I should be able to see a hand go up. Yes, I do. Andrew, you put the first hand up, I think. Would you like to respond?
Hold on. Just a sec.
Yeah, you're there. By the way, Andrew has advised that there are 2.4 billion people in the Commonwealth. We're not quite sure how many are over 55, but that is progress. So a quick response, if you could, Andrew.
Yeah, just to get into the standards. It's called the Rainbow Tick. It's for organisations committed to safe and inclusive practice in the development of services for the LGBTQI community.
Okay, and would somebody else like to comment? I can't see another hand. Yes.
So Jeremy here.
Hi, Jeremy. Fire away.
Can I just address the rural issue that you highlighted, Ian?
Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah, it was a key report that the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Housing for Older People looked at a couple of years back. And one of the things we saw was a lot of rural exclusion for older people in a variety of rural communities, some of it being digital exclusion, not seeing access to Wi-Fi and broadband as a utility, and therefore the connectivity through broadband not being there. We also saw issues around sort of building greater community resilience, where there was a more reliance on volunteering and befriending in many rural communities, often by older people themselves for other older people too.
Yeah, I think you've got a great point there regarding digital literacy. We have Sam Maguire from University of the Third Age who's going to be speaking a little bit later, and she has been seeing the demand from older adults that previously have not even gone online during COVID-19. That's fascinating to hear that. I mean, there is definitely an appetite. You're absolutely right. That is part of the inclusion context. I just wanted to go to David as he is furthest afield at this time. David, you had a response.
Yes, so a lot of the work we do around standards here in Australia overseas is really about what inclusive practices and cultural safety, and that makes sure that we understand diversity and celebrate diversity and make sure that we don't leave out minority groups and understand things about the rural and urban divide. But the standards will need to consider what inclusive practices look like for those multi-generational communities, and so that we don't leave the minority behind. And as I said in my speech, that no one is left behind. We really have to think about that in the development of these standards.
Yeah, inclusivity, I think that is absolutely key. And again, technology can play an important role in that particular consideration. I'm going to thank the first group. We had a broad world view. I'm not going to ask you to vote to see which country wins. We'll save that one until a little bit later today. I want to move now to housing for later life. As Jeremy was saying earlier, Lord Best, who is the chair of the Affordable Housing Commission, is a pioneer in this space. He is also very inspirational and has spoken at our events before. And you can't help but learn when you listen to what he has to say. So without further ado, may I introduce you to Lord Best.